All right, we're back with our Western Conference season preview for the 2014-15 season. We just gave you our Eastern Conference preview.
Ran a little long, but that's okay.
Ran a little long. We ran about almost half an hour long than we were supposed to, but we'll try to make this more time-friendly, more listener-friendly. So we'll get right into it. We'll start with the Southwest Division with San Antonio, Dallas, Memphis, New Orleans, and
Houston.
Houston? Yeah.
Houston.
Yeah, Houston. 3 Texas teams. I was encouraged by my partner and co-host to not harp on the Spurs and how just great an organization and how successful they've been. I think all our listeners know that.
It's very easy to fawn about them, their organizational structure, and how they're far and away the best organization in the league.
Sort of the gold standard.
So we won't do that. And we'll just say that there haven't really been any changes.
No, we're looking at a preview here, and they say key departures, none.
Yeah, there's really not been any.
And their key additions were both from the draft. So
they're pretty much going to be
kind of typical Spurs, typical offseason for them.
The same roster, and Leonard is only going to get better. Right. So it's pretty safe to assume that they'll be at the top of the Western Conference again, barring injury.
Right. I think we'll both agree Spurs, number one team in the West. That's all we need to say. They're definitely the top in this Southwest Division.
Now, more interesting
is
the race for second in this division, where you have 3 teams realistically vying for it in Dallas, Memphis, and Houston, and we differ on who we think is going to finish second. So why don't you share what you think is going to happen?
Dallas, with the addition of Chandler Parsons, and also their trade with the Knicks, bringing in Tyson Chandler, and also Raymond Felton, and also signing Jameer Nelson. Those are four pretty decent pickups there, for sure. I mean, to put it lightly. Chandler Parsons, obviously coming off his three seasons in Houston. He's gotten better every season. Just is a matchup nightmare. At 6'10", can handle the ball, can shoot, can rebound, can pretty much do everything that's asked from him and more. So that's why his addition is a timely one, considering the fact that Dirk Nowitzki, the face of the Mavericks for the last 15 years or so, is sort of nearing the end of his career, and certainly dropped off last season with his play.
Not significantly, though.
Not significantly, but it's not. He's obviously not the type of. He's not as quick as he used to be, and things of that nature, and he's not scoring as much. But the addition of Parsons, obviously they don't play the same position, but he'd be able to sort of complement Nowitzki. Dallas did lose Sean Marion, one of their starters from last season, who ended up with Cleveland. But Parsons pretty much just takes his spot because they're in the same position.
Calderon, who was pretty good for them last year.
Calderon.
Actually, and I don't know really whether Jameer Nelson is an upgrade to Calderon at this point in his career, because he's getting up there in years.
Yeah, I would almost say it's a toss up. It was pretty much just you can't go wrong with either. I mean, they're going to give you the sort of the same level of play. They each have their strong suits and their weak suits, but
right. And additionally, they lost Vince Carter, who obviously, being an old man, he's still is able to provide scoring bursts on certain nights.
Yeah, he had a game-winning shot against the Spurs, first round of the playoffs.
That people forget they pushed them to 7 games.
Right.
And they've lost a good amount of the core of that team, which is why I call into question people who are sort of anointing them the second best team in this division, where if you're bringing in the Tyson Chandler of 4 years ago, I'd say, yeah, without question, that this is the second best team here. But the problem is this is the Tyson Chandler of the present, who has been extremely injury prone and not shown the ability to dominate that he used to have when he was on Dallas before. And I've really liked Parsons as a player, well, ever since he was in college, and I thought Houston got great value for where they picked him.
For sure.
But I feel like
Second round pick.
Yeah, but people are, I think, overvaluing him a little bit coming into this season, because he's not shown that he is a perennial all-star caliber player, which I feel like some people are projecting him as for this season. And with Houston, although they did lose Lynn and Ashik, they did bring in Trevor Ariza, who has had sort of a resurgence in his career.
Definitely.
The last couple of years. And, I mean, they were very close to, I mean, without the Lillard buzzer beater, they win that Game 6 and go home, and I would probably pick them to win that game. So, I mean, yeah, they did have a disappointing end to last season, but I still think Houston's a very strong team. And as of now, I would pick them to finish ahead of Dallas and Memphis, who we really haven't talked about, who picked up Vince Carter from Dallas. How do you feel about Memphis coming into this season?
Memphis, I mean, obviously their two sort of rocks are in the paint at least, are Zach Randolph and Marc Gasol. But I think Mike Conley has certainly made his way into that top echelon of point guards.
Yeah, definitely top 10 point guard.
In the league. His first couple seasons, I was sort of questioning, whether he'd live up to the hype and whatever. But I mean, he's certainly, and it's it's easy when you have players in the paint, to help with that. But yeah, I think I don't know whether it's my love for the way Dallas plays, or Houston's just their roster. I think Houston's roster is. I think Houston's roster is third best in this division. I think just as a team, I think they're third best. Houston with obviously James Harden, Dwight Howard we haven't mentioned.
They just sort of go without saying.
Yeah.
And they did add Jason Terry.
Yeah.
Who's
obviously
he's in the twilight of his career, but can be that sort of spark at times when all their offense is sort of faltering. He can just sort of come in and give you a quick 15-point burst. I don't know. He's not as capable of that as he was earlier in his career, but he's still, I think, able to do that.
And considering that Houston might be in the need of a point guard come trade deadline time.
Well, they have Beverly still.
Watch out for Rajon Rondo possibly landing there.
Yeah, and I
definitely see that.
And I think that they have the cap room to do that.
Obviously,
Don't quote me on that.
Getting rid of Lynn would free up some cap space.
Yeah.
Which they did in the offseason.
And they didn't spend the big money to re-sign Parsons, which they would have had to.
Right. And Omar Ashik had a pretty sizable contract too, and they were able to get him off the books.
So they could make a move. But yeah, it's, again, obviously both of us are not experts, and even the people who are experts it'd be a very, very difficult task to accurately pick this division behind the Spurs.
Right, but I think at least in my opinion, I think the three top teams you got to look at. You got to stay in Texas for the three top teams. I think, just in my opinion. And then bringing up the rear, and it's no disrespect.
Slouch.
Yeah, it's no disrespect to them. I mean, they're very capable. New Orleans Hornets have a very interesting roster. Certainly, with a player of Anthony Davis, sort of asserting himself and really making himself known to the entire league. I think he's going to go from sort of a fringe to certain all-star to maybe an MVP candidate.
Oh, definitely. All he has to do is avoid injury, because he's already putting up star, if not superstar, like numbers. I still think it's a little early, especially with just how rigorous the conference schedule will be for them to compete for a playoff spot. But within the next few years, with some of these older teams like Memphis and Dallas fading out, they'll definitely come in and fill that void, I think, within the next 2, 3, 4 years.
I'm just looking at this stat here. It says only one of New Orleans starters played over 70 games last season. So
yeah,
health will definitely play a big role in what this team's final outcome is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think definitely. I mean,
I don't know about the acquisition of Jimmer. I don't know how much that will do for them.
Hey, I hope he can sort of get his NBA career back on track.
Was it ever on track?
Well, it's obviously. I mean, the hype that he had.
It's completely ridiculous.
At BYU was it was ridiculous, but he was captivating. And,
yeah, interesting college player.
Right. I think he was college basketball's answer to. I think he was sort of, maybe not quite at the level, but he was certainly getting towards that level of sort of a Johnny Manziel and Tim Tebow. Just in terms of like people tuning into their games and the whole Jimmer craze. Yeah, this division, I sort of compare it to the Eastern Conference's Central Division, or even the
Southeast.
The Southeast.
It's very deep.
Where possibly 4 teams, I could maybe a stretch to say 5 could make the playoffs.
Well,
but I think the West is so much. It's a deeper conference.
Well, I think unquestionably this is the best division in basketball.
Yeah.
It's not even close.
Yeah, I think all 5 teams are going to be over 500.
No, I don't think New Orleans will be, just because of who they have to play on a regular basis.
But we can agree that this is definitely the strongest division in the Western Conference.
And in the whole league, definitely.
So on to the Northwest. This isn't quite as an attractive division, but nevertheless.
We'll start with, the big departure in this division was
Kevin
Love leaving the Timberwolves after a promising season last year.
For sure.
That didn't quite pan out for them in a playoff berth.
But I feel they were trending in the right direction as a team, and to lose Love, you'd have to say sort of puts them back to their
Bottom feeder status.
Yeah, their life before drafting Kevin Love.
But
sort of that period. After Garnett left, and before they drafted Kevin Love, that season or 2. So, it's unfortunate, but.
Well, it was they saw it coming, and they got Wiggins out of it.
Yeah.
And whether he pans out is an unanswerable question.
Certainly, from an athleticism standpoint, he's right up there.
Right. It's just about, there's some guys who you say that they're complete sure things going into it based on their physical tools, but just for some reason that no one seems to figure out, they just don't pan out. So we'll have to see. But at the top of the division is, I think we can both agree, Oklahoma City, even with the recent news of Durant's injury that'll keep him out. I think that they're still talented enough to stay at the top of this division at least, and withstand missing him until he comes back. And no real significant additions to talk about. The only player that really left of any note was Derek Fisher, who obviously moved on to coaching. And the only team in this division that's really capable of challenging them is Portland. And how do you feel about their chances to challenge Oklahoma City in light of the Durant news?
Yeah, certainly with Portland, I think fans across the country got a chance to really see what they can do once they made it to the playoffs and they took on the Rockets. They're clearly an exciting team. They're sort of, they don't come from a large TV market, so they kind of have that underdog status. But when you have LaMarcus Aldridge and Damian Lillard, who fans have known about for a couple seasons, you sort of understand why they're such a good team.
I mean, probably you put their starting five up against most other starting fives in the league, and they come out favorably. The problem has been their bench has been almost non-existent.
Right, and so that makes the signings of Steve Blake and Chris Kaman that much more important. Chris Kaman hasn't had...
That's the first time anyone's called something related to Chris Kaman important in a long time.
Since his Clipper days.
There'll be guys to just basically fill out minutes while the starters get the little rest that they can.
Watch out for Joel Freeland.
Something to look out for.
Player from England.
The Anglosphere is descending on the NBA.
Yeah.
All the New Zealanders and the Australians. Canadians. The Commonwealth is alive and well in the NBA.
Just waiting for...
Didn't know where you were going with that one.
We'll move on.
We'll edit that out. So I don't think, even though...
No, I think Terry Stotts needs to be given a lot of credit for what he's done with changing the culture of just the whole organization, their fan base.
Well, Portland had some really awful luck.
Yeah.
In the last 8 to 10 years with Oden and Brandon Roy.
Yeah.
And really, you can't really blame the organization for that, because you could argue that they picked correctly when they picked Oden. It really would have been difficult to see what happened to him coming. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that...
But now he's the Heat's problem. So.
I don't think that Lillard...
Hey, I'm rooting for him, though.
Yeah, who isn't?
For sure.
I don't know if guys like... I'm sure Lillard will improve. Same thing with Wes Matthews. But I don't think that they'll improve enough.
Robin Lopez with a chance to sort of... I mean, he's always sort of been that... He's always kind of been behind his brother in all facets of the game. But I think this season he might be... I mean, it's because of his brother's unfortunate injuries, but he could...
But he had an incredible season last year.
Yeah. Robin Lopez, I think, could be set to sort of have at least a better season than his brother.
Oh, definitely, especially with the injury to Brooke to start this season.
Something that hasn't happened since pre-college days, I guess. So that'll be interesting to watch out for. And then the next 3 teams here, Denver, it's they bring back Aaron Aflalo, who's started out with them, went to Orlando for a couple seasons, and then comes back in a trade. They had made the playoffs in 10 straight seasons, but missed it last season.
Just, I think the sheer, um, just the level of quality in
Right.
the Western Conference made it so that a team like the Nuggets, you'd never get really excited about, but you usually say, oh, they're all right.
Yeah.
It just wasn't enough with all of the talent in that conference. And this season, I don't predict them making any sort of big leap. They certainly should be better than last season. And Afflalo will contribute to that, partially. Gary Harris, their draft pick, is a guy who could possibly contribute. Because you just kind of associate, or at least I do, associate like Michigan State players with sort of being NBA ready when they come out. But yeah, they'll be a sort of middling team, probably not finish above 500. And yeah, there's not really much else to say about them.
Yeah. Utah, I think they're my pick for possibly worst team in the league, but they do have some promising sort of second, third, and fourth year players.
Do you feel it was the right move committing as much money as they did to Gordon Hayward?
No, I don't think he's worth however much money he was, but I know it was
quite a substantial contract.
It was a pretty large deal. No, but I his numbers last season, I think it was like 16 or 17 points, which, I mean, he 16.2, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. So you definitely filled the box score there, but
he was asked to do quite a bit,
right,
and some things beyond his skill set.
Yeah.
I think that sort of hurt his efficiency numbers last year.
But no offense to Hayward, but when he's your number one option, scoring wise, there's
you're not going to be very good.
Yeah, there's a problem.
I don't think anyone would argue with you there.
But they ranked 29th in scoring last season. That's obviously not a recipe for success. And the fact that they fired their coach, Tyrone Corbin.
I mean, they really weren't going anywhere with him. Yeah.
So they bring Quinn Snyder, former Missouri head coach.
Well, the biggest story to talk about for them is Exum, and just the
rookie out of Australia.
The wide swings that are possible in his career path. I mean, he could, from what you hear about his physical talents, he could be a superstar level player, or he could be Sebastian Telfair 2.0. Yeah. I mean, it's really difficult. It's another one of those guys where they're just so physically gifted, but they don't really have a shot yet.
Right.
And yeah, it's very difficult to tell. Where do you lean on? Where do you think what his career holds for him?
I think Exum can be a player. I sort of compare him to Kyle Anderson from UCLA, who was also drafted last season.
So long, lanky guys.
Sort of and we're starting to see this more and more, sort of 6'5", 6'6", 6'7" point guards.
Yeah.
Kyle Anderson is 6'9", but Dante Exum's sort of that 6'6" range.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think a lot of Exum. I mean, he didn't play collegiately in the United States, but we're basing a lot of his play off of his performances with the Australian national team.
Playing against some pretty low-end competition.
Yeah, and it's not their fault. I mean, that's just the region of the world that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
But Australia's proven they can produce definitely quality players, and I'm kind of with you. I'm sort of on the fence as to where to put Exum. I definitely think with Utah, I mean, he's going to get a lot of minutes. He's going to have to play shooting guard, though.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
With Trey Burke.
Yeah.
So that'll be a change of position with him. And going on to Trey Burke, I mean, he's
I've liked what I've seen from him.
yeah. So Trey Burke, Exum, and Hayward. It's a young, sort of top three on your team, but I mean, there's some promise there.
I don't think it's as promising as cores of, say, Orlando or New Orleans, but it's something. And I mean, if you hit gold with Exum, then the management there is vindicated. But if he's a bust, which is totally possible, then they've kind of shot themselves in the foot for another 3 years or so.
Right.
But so you think that they'll be a worse team than Minnesota even?
Oh yeah. Because I mean, even before, you had Ricky Rubio.
Right.
You had who were some other players they had? Like I'm blanking on some.
Minnesota's guys aren't coming to mind. Well, they got rid of Shved.
Yeah, Alexei Shved.
Yeah, for me it's hard to see him.
But you look at these additions. I mean, obviously Andrew Wiggins they got in the trade with Love from Cleveland. Thaddeus Young they got in that same trade. It was like a 3 or 4 team deal.
Right.
Anthony Bennett, whose play sort of picked up towards the end of the season.
Well, he went from abysmal to just terrible.
Yeah, which is it's an improvement at least.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to differ with you there. I think Minnesota will be worse because they leaned on Love to do so much. That's why I think some people questioned him because you spent in the league 7-8 years. Why haven't they gone to the playoffs?
Yeah.
I mean, look at some of these teams he was propping up. For them to have even been in contention for the playoffs last year was a credit to him.
Yeah.
Because that was a pretty bad roster, especially in the conference they're in. So yeah, I'd pick. Well, I mean they're both going to be really bad teams, so it doesn't really matter either way. But I guess I'd pick Utah to finish.
Look out for Zach LaVine though, rookie from UCLA.
Another one of the sort of lanky guards.
Yep. Athleticism is through the roof, and that's a common theme that we seem to be using as descriptive words of these rookies.
Yeah.
Wiggins.
A lot of unpolished.
Yeah. Wiggins and, even back to last year, Oladipo.
Mm-hmm. Oladipo's a little more polished, with less upside, I think, than some of these other guys.
Right. But that certainly seems to be the way that the NBA is trending, more athleticism and less, I don't want to say...
Less catch, take a dribble, and shoot a jump shot.
Yeah, less of the...
Less of old man game and more of new school.
So we'll move on to the Pacific Division with both LA teams, Sacramento, Golden State, and Phoenix. I'm not as high on this division as maybe you are. I don't know. But
no, I don't think this is a great division. I think it has two really, really good teams in it.
It's sort of like I think it's a better division than the Northwest, but
not by that much.
Yeah, with the top 2 teams and then sort of 3 teams that'll be fighting it out for 3 through 5.
Yeah, and obviously with the top team being the Clippers, who they made some additions and they lost some guys, but really it was sort of not much of a change because the guys who they brought back in to replace some of the guys that left fulfilled the same role, and they're not even really worth discussing that much. The core is the same, and the core should be getting better this year. I mean, last year in the playoffs, I picked them to beat Oklahoma City, and they were obviously extremely close to doing that, barring some weird end-of-the-game officiating and some missed free throws. We would have been talking about them in a different light.
And who knows if the whole Donald Sterling thing hadn't come up. Did that affect their play at all?
Who can
It's
say?
only speculation, but
I think they'll be better this year than they were last
any
year.
team with Doc Rivers obviously has a chance to be definitely a conference finals contender. And with this roster, with their top three, Paul, Griffin, and Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's disappointing if they don't at least reach the conference finals.
Right.
And I'd venture to say that this far along, especially, Chris Paul's not getting any younger.
Right.
And he's been injury prone in the past. It's about time for him to break through.
Yeah.
With just how incredible of a player he is. Being, I'd say, undisputedly in the top 5 players in the league for most of his career.
I wouldn't say he gets a pass, but it's not talked about as often as I think it should be. The fact that he's, only been out of the first round, and it's same thing with Carmelo Anthony.
With Chris Paul being a far better player than Carmelo Anthony.
Yeah, they've only been out of the first round once or twice.
Yeah, and that's why Chris Paul has a lot of detractors, but for me, unless you're a transcendent, once in a generation player, you can't. It's very difficult to carry some of the rosters that he had to work with when he was in New Orleans. But now at this point, with the talent that he has around him, there are no excuses anymore.
Right.
They need to at least make it to the conference finals and challenge whoever's there, most likely San Antonio.
Right. So the team that will be vying for competing with the Clippers for the top spot in this division, Golden State Warriors, who made a pretty significant coaching move this season.
Some internal instability there,
Yep.
driving Mark Jackson out.
Mark Jackson leaves.
Replacing him with someone possibly even better.
Enter Steve Kerr. Same thing. He's in the same boat as Derek Fisher. No prior coaching experience, and actually Kerr's been out of.
But he does have the general manager
Yeah.
experience.
But Kerr's been out of sort of the basketball scene for a few seasons now. He's been commentating. But certainly someone that knows the game of basketball, has a reputation for having a great basketball mind, and should be able to. I think the fact that he was a shooter when he played, and having two of the best, arguably two of the best shooters in the league,
one of the best backcourts in the league, if not the best,
in Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson. I think helps them as players, and also helps the team. So I think that's definitely a plus.
Yeah, if you look at the roster of this team, it's just extremely strong up and down.
Andrew Bogut's got to stay healthy.
Yeah, but they've got
as we seem to say every season.
Yeah, but when he's healthy, he's just a tremendously impactful defender.
Yep.
If you put this team in other eras of the Western Conference, you're probably talking about them as one of the top 2, but it's just they happen to fall in this era of just almost unprecedented, stacked talent. And I don't think that they're quite good enough to challenge the Clippers.
But they've surprised us in the past, and I could see it.
They could certainly beat a higher seeded team in the playoffs, like they've shown that they could do already. But I think we can both agree that I don't think that they're good enough to win this division. And as for the other teams in this division, Phoenix had probably the surprise season last year, with Goran Dragic emerging as an all-star type player. My question to you is, do you think that level of play for him is sustainable, or if it was more of a flash in the pan type thing and he's a good player but not at that level?
I definitely think that Dragic's play this upcoming season, his stats won't be as sexy as last season.
Sexy Slav.
Yeah, right. But the fact that Eric Bledsoe re-signed,
Yes, after much
sort of,
many questions.
he was going to Minnesota and Sacramento, and he ended up re-signing with Phoenix. But no, I think Dragic. I mean, most improved player. Normally, you know, what's been the thing that's been holding him back throughout his career. You sort of wonder if he can live up to the past season, his play. But I mean, as sort of a prototypical European player, I mean, he's great with the ball. He can shoot. He's great from a technical aspect. Sort of taking over for Steve Nash. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I definitely think if you look at the Suns roster compared with some of the other teams that might be on the outside looking in for the playoffs, they don't really stack up well, but they seem to mesh well together, and they fought their way to a ninth place finish in the conference last year. So I don't really understand the whole Tyler Ennis draft. They drafted Tyler Ennis,
Yeah,
but
it was a little strange. Probably one of the weaker picks that we've gone over.
no, just from a positional standpoint, because Dragic is.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's almost Minnesota-like in overloading on point guards, and also acquiring Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah. I don't know what Isaiah Thomas is hoping to get in Phoenix that he couldn't get in Sacramento.
Cash money.
Cash money. Certainly get more notoriety and playing time in Sacramento, but
I think last season, I think that they'll be a solid team, but
I'm kind of with you. I think last season was
it was a little
aberration.
Yeah, you have to think that they'll regress a little bit this year because there's no way Dragic is having the same type of season he had last year. I mean, he had a top 10 player in the league caliber season, which I think he's a fine player. I don't think he's at that level.
Yeah.
So, I think they'll finish third in the division, but miss the playoffs. So we'll have to run down 8 teams, and I may change my mind on that.
Uh-huh.
So on to
and sort of what used to be one of the best rivalries in the league, Los Angeles Lakers and Sacramento Kings. They've had their
fallen
battles.
From greatness.
Yeah, they've had their battles over the years, but unfortunately,
well, not so unfortunately for the Lakers. They had enough success.
Yeah, they've had enough success, so it's kind of about time that they feel the pain that other teams have felt. But Byron Scott has his work cut out for him this season, replacing Mike D'Antoni. I think what most Laker fans are looking forward to seeing is Kobe Bryant. Can he play a relatively healthy full season? And what his stats are going to be like? Is he going to have any lift on his jump shot? Is he going to have the same lift, same explosiveness? He only played 6 games last season, so it was kind of And those 6 games that he did play just didn't look like the Kobe that we've all.
I mean,
from a shooting perspective, just from a total fitness standpoint.
And it's, I think, completely unprecedented for a guy to miss as much time as he has and come back and regain his former status at this age.
I think an interesting question is, who's going to have who's going to play in more games this season, and who's going to have just a better overall season, Kobe or Derrick Rose?
Oh, probably Derrick Rose.
Yeah.
Just because he's younger. I mean, Kobe's got so many minutes logged.
Right. That's interesting.
I mean, I don't think either of them will be playing at the All-Star level.
No. But the way that the voting goes, they'll probably both players will probably get voted in.
Right. And I also think that Rose has a better team to bail him out
Sure.
and make him look better in certain situations.
Sure.
Where Kobe will have to take... Kobe and Jeremy Lin, their latest acquisition, will have to take a lot of bad shots.
I mean, but you look...
But this team will probably be decent offensively.
Yeah.
But defensively, I think they'll be the worst team in the league. Because who can you point to on this team that plays defense?
Sort of that old Phoenix, those old Phoenix teams. You know, they'd score 110 points but give up 105.
Except that they were actually contenders.
Right.
This team has, we'll say, okay offense probably.
But you look at this roster and you'd say, well, they could possibly fight their way into playoff contention.
I would not say that.
Well,
because
you look at a team.
You
look at a team with Carlos Boozer, Jeremy Lin. You draft Julius Randle.
Ooh, hold on. You have geriatric Nash, geriatric Kobe. Boozer has really not been a relevant contributor in a couple of years. I mean, he had flashes for Chicago, but last year really he didn't really do much for them.
No, he underachieved in Chicago. I mean, that's
Jeremy Lin.
Any Bulls fan will tell you that.
Jeremy Lin's
never lived up to expectation.
Right. Jeremy Lin's fine.
I think what I meant to say was if you look at players over their careers.
Oh well, yeah.
You know, a player like Boozer, Jeremy Lin. Obviously, this season with the Knicks was one of the craziest things I've seen in a while. But
this is a really good roster 7 years ago.
Right, yeah. It's a good way of putting it.
Maybe 5. But in 2014, they're going to...
They will finish ahead of Sacramento, though. That's my...
Probably. Though,
they should.
Don't be certain about that.
I mean, with Sacramento, you got DeMarcus Cousins and Rudy Gay. But clearly Cousins is the face of that franchise right now. I think the problem with him has always been sort of keeping his emotions in check. Because if he lets his play do the talking, he's one of the... You can make the case. I mean, right now, would you put him in the top 10 big men in the league?
I'd have to get a list in front of me.
Right.
He'd certainly be top 15.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, despite his attitude problems, he's really been one of the few bright spots for them in a long time.
I mean, he actually makes you care about watching the Kings.
Or a slight reason to watch the Kings play. I think Stauskas was actually a pretty good pick for them.
For sure.
Which I feel people automatically associate him with the old college mold of white, unathletic shooter, which is totally untrue. He is an extremely athletic player. I mean, if you look at his vertical and all of his combine stats, he was right up there in the top tier. So
another Canadian.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, I think I think that was a solid pick in an extremely strong draft where it was pretty difficult to not make a good pick, honestly.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I'm sort of with you in that I don't think that they'll finish higher than the Lakers because of the Lakers' additions. I think that those additions will just drag them to be slightly better than terrible. But
I think the bottom line is both the Lakers and Kings, they will not be in contention for playoff spots or things of that nature. So in that respect, they don't even deserve to be talked about.
But we did it anyway.
Yeah, we saved you the trouble, and we'll talk about them. But yeah, I guess we'll do the same thing that we did with the last podcast. Is we'll name off our top 8 teams from the Western Conference this time. You want to start?
Sure. I think Obviously, San Antonio remains at the top because there's no reason not to keep them there. Clippers at 2, with the ability to challenge San Antonio, but ultimately, I think San Antonio will still finish with the best record because they're San Antonio, and that's just what they do.
Yeah.
I think the Thunder will salvage the 3rd spot, even despite Durant missing time.
And that could be a very important 3rd spot because if everything goes according to plan in the playoffs, they'd be facing the 2 seed.
Right.
So you want to try to do as much as you can to avoid that 4 seed as you can. So you want to try to, if you're not going to win the 1 seed, you want to try to be 2 or 3. Just so you don't have to face San Antonio prior to the conference finals if everything goes according to plan.
Right. As for 4, it's really, for me, honestly a toss-up between 4 teams being Dallas, Houston, Golden State, or Portland, and I think I'm gonna pick Portland just because of the weakness of the division, where I think Dallas and Houston and even Memphis might overall be better than Portland. I think that they might cannibalize each other in that division. So I'd probably pick Portland, then Houston, then Dallas, then Golden State or Dallas for me are almost interchangeable. And then the 8 seed, probably Memphis.
I thought you already had 8.
Well, wait, let's count them up. San Antonio, Clippers, Thunder, Portland, Houston, Dallas, Golden State. Yeah,
so one more.
Well, it's picking 4 teams from one division with how stacked it is.
It's pretty much between Memphis and Phoenix, right?
Yeah. I'd still pick Memphis over Phoenix because I think Phoenix will regress.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my top 8, subject to change. But how does yours fall out?
Mine's very similar. San Antonio 1, LA 2, Clippers 3.
Oh really? Thanks for clarifying.
3, I'm gonna go with Dallas. 4, Oklahoma City. 5, Houston. 6, Portland. 7, Golden State. And 8, Memphis.
Reasonable.
With the Hornets, Pelicans and Suns sort of fighting it out for that ninth seed, playoff
spot.
fringe.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the West certainly is more intriguing from top to bottom, but
I don't know about more intriguing. I'd say better.
Yeah, the West top to bottom is certainly more. It'll create more buzz and what have you. But the West certainly has Cleveland. I think what we should do now is probably label our top 8 teams in the league.
Well, that seems like that'll take quite a while. Why don't we just throw out some teams we think who can contend for a championship?
Yeah. Obviously,
San Antonio,
Cleveland,
Los Angeles,
Clippers,
Thunder by the end of the season when they're healthy.
Bulls.
See, I don't know if I think that the Bulls are capable of beating like a San Antonio or Los Angeles, because that's a tier above.
Yeah.
I mean, they're certainly in like that mix, but I think that there's just sort of like a top tier usually by the end of the season, and it's usually like 4 teams or less with the NBA.
Right.
I mean, yeah, feel free to put them in there, but and then I don't think anyone else from the East is capable.
No.
No, not Miami, and no one else really. But the gap has certainly closed a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Where I mean, last year may have been a historically great Western Conference and a historically bad Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I don't see any under 500 teams making the playoffs this season.
In the East.
In any, obviously the West, it hasn't happened.
That's ridiculous.
Recent memory, but in
the
East, I don't.
I mean, maybe one, just because. I think. In just seeing how bad the Eastern Conference this year is, we might be jumping a little bit in how much we're saying that they've improved. I mean, certainly the conference is better, but it's by no means a good conference yet still. So I don't know. We'll have to see. And we've gone way over time yet again.
Gone over time, but we were shorter than the previous podcast.
It's progress.
Going on 52 minutes, but yeah, we hope you enjoyed our extensive and in-depth preview.
Hopefully informative, maybe not.
Hopefully informative. Hopefully we're giving you information that you can't find elsewhere. At least some of our takes and opinions on different issues and teams and what have you. But yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll probably come out with probably an around All-Star time, around the All-Star break, sort of a first half recap of the season, maybe a look ahead to the second half of the season. So until then, we'll sign off, and thanks for listening.